Hey guys, I want to speak today about overcoming fear and developing a steadfast heart. Overcoming fear and developing a steadfast heart. And I want to use Psalm 112. Psalm 112 for me is a great blessing and a great challenge because it has these extraordinary ideals of the fact that we can really overcome all fear and we can really have a steadfast heart. I want to read two verses and then unpack three reasons why we don't overcome through fear and have a steadfast heart. So the two verses, verse 7 and 8, says, "He will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting the Lord. His heart is secure. He will have no fear. In the end, he will look in triumph on his foes." So the psalm twice says he's going to have no fear, not even of bad news. Now, we all know that can't mean that no bad news won't come, but he doesn't fear the bad news if it does come. But he just has no fear of what's going on or the potential of anything that might go on that's bad. Astonishing. And it says twice, his heart is secure, his heart is steadfast. In other words, he goes through life with this steadfast heart, no matter what's going on in the present, and no matter what bad news might come, he doesn't fear and he has a steadfast heart. How? How do you overcome fear and get a steadfast heart? I want to suggest three reasons why we fear and therefore we forfeit a steadfast heart. The first reason we fear is because we fear losing something. But the psalmist says if you fear God above everything else, you won't fear of losing. That fear of losing something won't dominate you. So in verse 1, it says, "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in his commands." So the reason we fear is because we have something that is so important to our identity. It's something that we couldn't live without, something that if we lost, we'd lose ourselves. And the fear of losing that, the fear of that being threatened, the fear of that being attacked in any way is so scary to us that it consumes us. But the psalmist starts by saying, "Well, I fear the Lord." Now, that can't mean I'm scared of him because it talks about delighting in his commands, but it means I am consumed by God. If I have God, I have everything. My relationship with God is more important to me than anything else. It's not that we love other things less, our children, our jobs, or our families, or our hobbies, or our desire. No, but we love God more. So God is first. If you want to overcome fear of losing something, you have to say, as long as I have God, I have everything I need. And I would actually say, go in your worst imaginations to what might happen and go, even if that happened, I'd be okay. As the famous hymn says, it'd be well with my soul because I have God. So we forfeit a steadfast heart because we fear losing something, but the psalmist says, I have God and I can't lose him. The second reason we fear is we fear losing control. Our desires, our plans, our dreams, our expectations. And so we've got a sense of control. So we're living for the present. We want everything now. And we have to dictate our life to find happiness now. So we fear losing control. Whereas the psalmist says in verse 8, in the end, he will look in triumph on his foes. In other words, when things happen and when bad news does come, I can't understand how anything good's coming out of this. But the Christian knows in the end, it'll be okay. In the end. And we have the future of eternity in heaven and complete joy and happiness forever with Jesus and those who love him and know him, and a new creation to explore where all our desires, all our dreams, all our plans will be fulfilled in 10 times more and a million times more. In other words, the story of Joseph, for example, this horrendous story of him being abused by his brothers, sent off to slavery in Egypt and years in prison and then being mistreated, but eventually he rises to power. And at the end of it, Genesis 50 verse 20 says, you intended it for evil, but God intended it for good. In the end, it was okay. So in the end, it will be okay. Whatever it is, in the end, it will be okay because God will work everything out for good, for our good and for his glory. So it's okay. So we fear losing something, we fear losing control, and thirdly, we fear exposure. In other words, there's an uneasy conscience that we might be revealed and something inside us that we know is not right, an area of life where we're not living under the will of God. We're doing our own thing and we know it's wrong. there's that fear that we might be exposed. Whereas the psalmist says in verse 3 and verse 8, his righteousness endures forever. And it talks about this righteous life. In other words, he's not perfect, but he's being transparent. He's a life of integrity. It's a life of honoring God in all decisions. And so we often forfeit our steady heart because we are living in a way that is not honoring to God. And therefore we have this fear of being exposed and judged. Whereas in the end, he says in the end, the wicked will be judged, but I know that my longings will be fulfilled. So why do you not have a secure heart today? Is it because you fear losing something? Give that thing to God and say, God, you're more important. Is it fear of losing control that you can make this life everything you want it to be? Give up that control and say, God, in the end, it'll all work out. Is it a fear of an uneasy conscience? Well, whatever area of your life where you haven't submitted to God, now's the moment to do it. Don't wait. Don't forfeit that steady heart that you can have. So how do we overcome fear and develop a steady heart? We fear God above all else. We think about the future, not just the present, and we live a life that honors God now. So there's no uneasy conscience in us. I hope this helps, that you might too overcome fear and gain a steady heart, that you wouldn't even fear the potential bad news that comes. Not because it won't come, but even if it does come, it's going to be okay. God bless.